Hello, everyone. This is Jasper, and welcome back to another episode of the Newton Public Schools Alumni Association podcast series. Today, we have another special guest joining us. Today, we have Adin here with us. So, welcome to the show, Adin. Very nice to have you here. Do you mind giving us a quick introduction of who you are, when you graduated itself, as well as what you're doing now?
Of course, yeah. Thanks, Jasper. It's a pleasure to be here. So my name is Adin Henderson. I graduated from Newton South back in 2017. After graduating, I went and got my bachelor's at Boston College, where I studied environmental sociology with a minor in music. I graduated from Boston College in 2021 and went straight into law school at Boston University School of Law. I graduated BU Law in May of 2024 and am currently practicing as a finance attorney at Choate Hall and Stewart, which is a big law firm in the city.
Wow, that's amazing. I just heard your major just now, and this might be me, but I kind of don't really know what the name environmental sociology kind of means. So, would you mind just kind of talking to us about what this major means and kind of what you learned through it?
Sure. Yeah. So, environmental sociology was a subset of a pretty new program at BC when I joined. And so, I guess, discipline is actually called environmental studies. And there is a difference in their course offerings where, when you think about environmental um, as a, I guess, it's just the environment as a topic, BC broke it into environmental geosciences. Those are actual like scientists who are going into the field and doing research and more of a sciencey type approach to environmental issues. Environmental studies is the sort of arts and humanities side of environmental issues, and so within the environmental studies program, they had concentrations you can pick, where you could pick, environmental economics, environmental sociology, um, environmental literature, I think. So environmental sociology was basically I took the general environmental studies course offerings, where I learned a range of things, and then I also took sociology course offerings, and it kind of merged into one degree. And basically, what I studied, this was a while ago, but I studied the social impacts of environmental issues and climate change, and so looking at not only how climate change impacts the environment, but how humans interact with that environment, and how, particularly, I was focused on environmental justice, which looked at how the impacts of climate change and sort of industrial activities impacted people differently based on their socioeconomic backgrounds, where they lived geographically, um, racial issues, stuff like that.
I see. That is fascinating stuff. And hearing about what you did after your undergraduate studies, which is law, it's kind of, I guess, fair that there might be some type of connection. What type of law do you currently practice right now as an attorney?
Yeah, so it's a little less related. I am in the finance and restructuring practice group at my law firm, Choate Hall and Stewart, and basically what we do is we represent lenders in a variety of transactions across the board, and so I have the most amount of experience, I'd say, and I've only been
Oh,
practicing for a little under a year, but I've done a good amount of retail finance transactions where we would represent lenders who would lend to retail companies that you'd see, in the store. Um, and but there's restructuring aspects to it. So company goes into bankruptcy, we'd help out there. We have a sports financing practice where we represent lenders who are giving money to sports teams. So a little different than environmental issues, but that was something I sort of got into during my time at law school.
oh, I see. That's fascinating. So, I guess what you learned after your undergraduate education is kind of different. But I guess in the 4 years when you were doing environmental sociology as well as music, I guess what type of career path were you imagining? And I guess maybe what motivated you to maybe make a sort of pivot into law after graduating.
Sure. So it was a bit of an interesting time. I kind of had, it sounds very ominous, but I kind of was living a bit of a dual life at BC where I was really interested in my studies, which was music and environmental sociology. But at the same time, I had a pretty active life in the, I guess, student activities realm in terms of
Oh,
what I was involved
okay.
in outside of the classroom. Um, so I when it came time to start thinking about what I wanted to do after I graduated, I was going into my junior year, or I was finishing up my junior year, um, in which was 2020, when COVID had happened. So we had all been sent home.
Oh,
I was taking Zoom classes in my basement, and I was getting ready to be a senior, but I had a lot of time to think because a lot of the internships fell through. Like this is, you know, May
yeah.
2020, so things were sort of just at the beginning. Um, but extracurricularly, I was the president of the Black Student Forum at Boston College, which was an undergraduate student group that was basically geared towards being a community space for Black students as well as an advocacy group for the interests of Black students. And so I don't know how much you remember about the spring of 2020, other than COVID, but that was also around the
Right.
time of the George Floyd murder.
Mm-hmm.
And so during that time, I had just stepped into leadership at the Black Student Forum. My junior year, I
Oh,
was the vice president. I've been elected to be the president my senior year. And so when this stuff was sort of happening, I had a bit of a responsibility to um, do advocacy on behalf of the Black students that summer, and especially because I didn't have an internship. I didn't have much else to do. And so I spent most of my time talking to fellow Black students, talking to my co-leaders, and meeting with administration at Boston College. And we were going back and forth a couple times a week, if not daily. And towards the end of the summer, one of the um, then administrators of, I think, student affairs, who I actually recently spoke on a panel in his class and told him this story,
that's great.
he sort of in passing mentioned, "Oh, like, you're pretty good at this whole advocacy thing. Have you considered law school?" And at the time, I had no clue what I wanted to do. I knew that this is going to sound very simple, but I knew that I wanted to go to grad school because COVID was happening, so things were pretty complicated. In
Mm-hmm.
my mind, going to grad school is a safer bet, but I hadn't really thought about what sort of grad school I'd be good at. I could have, pursued a PhD, pursued a master's, um, but law was something that always intrigued me, and I always hadn't enjoyed the sort of advocacy process. So I kind of just latched on to what he said. Decided I was going to go to law school and spent that summer studying for the LSAT and applying. So it was definitely a confluence of some pretty unique circumstances, but I'm definitely really glad I pursued that and am where I am now.
Wow, that's amazing. That is a really fascinating kind of decision process, which is kind of, you were head of a student advocacy group, and after some things that happened around the world as a response, you kind of interacted with a bunch of people, and then someone kind of just gave you that eureka idea of, hey, you're pretty good at this type of dealing with law stuff. Do you want to do law? And I guess that's how you picked it up. So I guess
Definitely.
after you did your law stuff and are working right now in finance, is there maybe anything from your undergraduate studies that you feel kind of maybe carried over, either in terms of direct knowledge or maybe indirect soft skills from either music or environmental sociology?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I always used to joke about this when I was in law school because I had a major in environmental studies, concentration in sociology, and I had a minor in music. And when you're studying music at a higher level, you've completed all of the theory courses and you're getting into like these really conceptual things where you're writing these 15 to 20 page papers analyzing actual pieces of music. And so you would start the way that we were taught to structure these papers is you would start with, I guess, theoretically what was happening. You describe the piece, and then you'd go into the actual technical background of how you're describing the piece. You would sort of raise what you were like. You would sort of raise the argument you were trying to make, and then back it up by uh, different sources and different bits of music theory. And
Oh, I
I
see.
was
Okay.
surprised by how similar that is to what we use to make legal arguments, especially in law school. Um, in law school, you're taught to use what's called the IRAC system, which is IRAC, where it stands for issue, rule, application, conclusion, and that's how you structure your legal writing. And that was really similar conceptually to me than to how I was taught to analyze these musical pieces. So I always joke about, I was in a pretty rigorous major, but I find myself applying a lot of the skills I learned to use to analyze music more than I do my more, because I was doing a
Wow.
lot more quantitative sociology. So I think that's pretty funny, but I definitely tap into that a lot. And I'm still involved in a lot of the things outside of work um,
Oh. Do you do
that
anything, I
sort of
guess,
kept me
related to
going.
your undergraduate major or minor outside of work, like maybe playing in a band or something?
It's interesting actually. So I'm still kind of getting settled in my post school life. Um, and I've been looking to join a band actually. I was in a band all of
Oh.
college. Law school was kind of hard to keep that up, but I actually today, no joke, I think earlier this morning I joined like a Boston musician
Oh, wow.
Facebook group because I'm still thinking about it,
Speak of the
but
timing,
at
yeah.
some point I'm going to muster up the courage to post in there and see if anybody wants to get a group together, but it's definitely on my radar as something I want to do.
I see. So if you do create a band, what instrument do you envision yourself playing the most?
So it's interesting. When I was back at South, I was the bassist in the jazz ensemble. And in college, I played bass a lot. But one of the instruments I really like to play a lot is banjo. So I'd actually want to join because and I've done, I've done a lot of funk groups, jazz groups. I think it would be really fun to do a bluegrass group where I played banjo in that. But that, that still needs to be seen.
I see. That is fascinating stuff. I think this is something that like you're probably almost always gonna win at two truths, one lie, where you're like, I try to guess what my undergraduate major was as currently doing finance attorney stuff,
Yeah.
and basically no one would be able to guess that you're doing environmental sociology or minoring in music even. And I think this is a fantastic journey, honestly. And also, like I guess after your undergrad studies, when you go into law school, there are obviously people who maybe have already decided that they wanted to do law from undergrad already, so they kind of have some type of prior knowledge. So, is there anything that you did in this process, either mentally or kind of like in terms of academics, to kind of supplement this gap?
Yeah. So that's a good question. I think when it comes to law school, it's an interesting place because you think of all the other sort of professional grad schools, these dental school, veterinary school, medical school, there are a set of prereqs or coursework that you have been expected to do or take before going there. And, you think about the MCAT, you're being tested on medical issues. Or you think about the dental admission test, you're being tested on dental issues. The law school admission test is just logic. So it's just testing your ability to engage in logical patterns and reasoning. So people aren't really expected to go into law school with a set of knowledge that's going to serve them there. And I think that's one of the things that makes law school pretty unique is there are people from different walks of life with different experience and backgrounds all show up to class on day one with virtually the same amount of knowledge, and that has sort of carried throughout practice and different internships and things I've done where people aren't really people are expected to be able to learn quickly and grasp onto topics, but you're not really expected to know a ton. And so entering the legal space, I more so was just focused on making sure I carried the habits that got me into law school in terms of being diligent about studying, um,
Oh, okay.
and those similar things. But I don't think I felt the need to do anything to supplement it because people come from a variety of majors. You have people who are pre med. You have people who have maybe worked for 15 years since college and are going back to grad
Oh,
school, and so they haven't even been in a
okay.
classroom for over a decade. So you have a lot of variety in the amount of people that are there, and so when it comes to expectations, I felt like I not fit in, but I was just sort of part of a larger group of people who were trying to wrap their head around it. And there was definitely a learning curve, but I felt like I was, in line with the rest of my class. I didn't feel like I, had a disadvantage because I made more of a last minute decision to pursue law.
I see. That's amazing. So I guess, just to end things off, since, you've talked a lot about, how to, I guess, think about the way that you are in law school, to think about how the people around you also have diverse life experiences. What is maybe, I guess, one value or one mindset that you feel that high schoolers or maybe even people doing undergrad studies right now should kind of hold in mind when they explore maybe other career paths, or maybe try to go down further down the career path that they have chosen, that you think maybe has brought you very far in life and you think will bring all of us just as far as it has done to you?
Sure. So I'm gonna repeat. I can't remember who gave me this advice, but I'm gonna repeat something I've heard a lot in my sort of academic career, and that's nobody will care about your career more than you do. And nobody's going to be more invested in your success than you are. And that's not to say that you're not going to have a variety of people who are supportive and invested in your success, but at the end of the day, it's your career and you're the one doing it. And so your thoughts and feelings should be the number one priority. And I think especially starting out as early as high school in this sort of funnels going, into college and into postgrad education, but there's going to be a lot of people, be it peers, be it advisors, sometimes even family, who have a lot of opinions about what you should do and how your career should play out. But at the end of the day, it's going to be your career and you're going to be the one living in it. And so
Right.
I would try to prioritize figuring out what you want to do and how you want to do it and using that sort of, I guess, goal to guide how you do that. And that's not to say that you should tune out advice or you should tune out mentorship and isolate yourself. I'd say quite the opposite, but it's just you are always going to be the number one fan and participant in your career. And so I would try to push back on advice that may encourage you to, or not push back, but challenge advice that may encourage you to do something that you think is at odds with what you actually want to do. Because, once you are out of the cycle of education, and depending on what career you choose, it may be as early as 21, maybe as late as your mid 30s. But once that's done, you are working your career for the rest of your life. As long as you want to do it, you can switch careers, but like once you're done with school, that's it. You're working. And so you want to make sure that you're doing something that you're passionate about and that you want to do. And you shouldn't have to make concessions based on what other people want you to do. And so I was very much encouraged to invest in what I wanted to do and follow my desires. And that's kind of why you see a bit of a zigzag path where, I get to college and I want to do environmental studies. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to go
Yeah.
to law school, but maybe I want to do environmental law. And then I graduate law school. And I'm like, actually, I like finance law. Um, and that's very much because I had good mentorship around me that encouraged me to go and do what I wanted to do. But I would just say put that first.
I see. So it's just that, it's your life. You should be in the driver's seat. No one else should be making decisions for you. You shouldn't be making decisions for anyone else. You're your own essentially, and you're making decisions for yourself. So thank you very much for being here with us, Adin. I hope that everyone listening to this has learned a lot of things from Adin's fascinating life journey of going from environmental sociology as well as music all the way to law, something that, might be really unexpected in some cases, but ultimately it's what fit him the best and it's what, Adin loves the most, and ultimately that's all that matters. So I'm Jasper. Thank you very much for being here with us, Adin, once again, and I will see everyone next time.